I've been going through 5 routines clean every day at Lilleshall. It's like, I ain't falling. In the all-round, I did it as good as I did it in the final as well. I was so confident. I was like, I ain't falling. It's like, I can't fall. And absolutely smashed it. I remember, that you see it in a video if you watch it on YouTube now. I finished, I'm in dismount and handstand like this, and I'm smiling already. I'm literally just like, I've done it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was incredible. It was a big stadium as well, and obviously everyone's there chanting your name and whatnot. Oh, it was brilliant. It was like a fuck you to everybody who doubted me or didn't select me. It was so I went there, beat Berkey and Max on pommel. Max was the bronze medalist and Berkey was the gold medalist. And I went there and beat them both, and I was like, yeah, like this is me. I'm back. All of a sudden there was pressure because I was now somebody. Before I was the young kid, the new kid on the block, coming in, no pressure on my shoulders. I'm just going out. If I get a medal, everyone's like, who's this guy? And then now I was the world silver medalist, European gold medalist. It was like, right, Dan's going to do something here. When I first retired, I left on a real sour note. So, like, I hated gymnastics.
This episode of the Sam Oldham podcast is sponsored by Turn, the only brand dedicated solely to men's gymnastics. Towards the end of my career, I started to work closely with a team at Turn to design custom uniforms that expressed who I was and where I came from, and they were always able to bring my ideas to life. For years, I wore uncomfortable gymnastics clothing until I started to wear Turn, whose uniforms are built with their attention to detail and quality in mind. Go check them out now at turn-gymnastics.com and enjoy the episode. Dan, it's really good to see you, man, and I've got so many questions to ask you, but before we start with that, just tell me a bit about your life now and what you're up to.
So, married, got a little boy, he's 5 years old. Everything revolves around him. It's literally, got him doing so many different clubs, different sports activities, trying to find something he loves. So everything is kind of geared towards just finding something that he wants to do.
Has he tried gymnastics yet? Have you taken him along? That's the first question that came to my head then.
I'm actually going to go this weekend.
Really?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
More for just like a little kind of play session with his mate. His mate is going, so it's like, right, I'll take him along, see how he gets on. But he can handstand. I don't know where he's learnt that.
Oh, so you've not taught him?
No, and he did like a no-handed cartwheel off the couch the other day. I was like, what are you doing?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, mate, wow.
So he's like, I feel like he's born to do it, but I'm still a bit wary whether I want to do it.
Where's he going to go? Where are you going? Like in Corby?
Just in Corby, yeah. They've got quite a good setup there. So I think I'm going to take him down there, see how it is.
Yeah, I think back in the lockdown, I did some mentoring with the girls' club there in Corby. Yeah. So yeah, they must have quite a good gym because those girls were like pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was in 2012 they built like a new gym there because when I did it in Corby when I started, it was just out of sports hall with little mats in a cupboard. But they've got like a proper facility now, which is ace.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I was today before this podcast, I was having a little look at like your record and like on Wikipedia because I kind of do that before I interview everyone, even though I know you, I've known you for 20 years. I was honestly astonished when I went back and just looked at how good you were when you were younger. Now, being a little bit removed from the sport, when you look back, were you aware of just how talented you were when you were a kid in your early teenage years, or were you just in the moment? Because for people that are listening, you made your senior debut at 16. Yeah. That's unbelievable.
I mean, I knew I was good because you were getting selected for GB for things, but I didn't know kind of how good I was. And then back then as well, GB weren't really getting results. So I was good in Britain, but I hadn't really done many internationals and things like that. And I was just having fun with it. Like, when you're good at something, you have fun, don't you? And you mess around in the gym and, new moves just came really easy as well. Absolutely loved it. And yeah, well, I did Commonwealths at 16, which was amazing. I think, so I competed for Scotland. My dad was born in Edinburgh. I think if I was English, I wouldn't have made the team because they had some really good seniors. So it was kind of a little bit lucky as well that I could compete for Scotland, but then it gave me so much confidence being in that senior environment from an early age. But I think now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if you do seniors that early, you can't go back to juniors now.
Yeah, I think you were the person that changed that rule.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think actually in 2008, so when we did Junior European Championships, you had already competed did you compete in the Europeans in 2006 as a senior, or was it 7?
I was injured, so I did 2007, and I got a silver on pommel.
Yeah. So I saw that. I couldn't remember that, and my gymnastics knowledge is super high. So I saw that one come up, Amsterdam. I was like, wow. So at 17, you won a European senior medal, which is unbelievable. And then a year later, you compete with us at the Junior European Championships,
Yeah.
and all the other teams kick off. Like, you can't have this guy competing. He's too good, essentially, because you'd have just been to the World Championships 2007 in Stuttgart, right? And you qualified for the Pommel final.
Yeah.
So again, at 17, which for like young athletes listening now who are gymnasts, like, that's unbelievable. Like, it's incredible, that is. So to then, come to the junior team, literally clean up, win. How many gold medals did you get? 4 or 5? I think.
It might have been 5, you know.
5
and
junior
a bronze or
European
something
gold
like that.
medals, which is just incredible. That's the first time we ever won a gold medal. And then you move on to a few months later and you go to Beijing at 18 to compete in the Olympic Games. Like, when you sit back and look at that as a junior career, it is incredible, mate, when you look at it on paper.
It came so fast as well, because obviously, as you know, as a junior, you're just in your gym. You're not really doing a lot of competitions. All of a sudden, I was getting selected for everything. Senior competitions, junior competitions, and I was doing everything as well. And like you said, I remember Russia weren't too happy with us because they'd never been beaten before, had they, by us, and we smashed it. and then obviously going to Beijing as well in the Olympics later on in that year after being a junior was incredible. Like, it was happening so fast I couldn't stop to think. I was just living in that moment. And I did quite well in Beijing as well, a couple of falls, but I was young. So it was all just like gained experience, which was ace.
What are your memories from Beijing?
I remember when we first got there, it rained a lot.
Right.
I think they'd shot rockets up into the sky to clear some smog or something. It rained for about 3 days.
Really? I've actually I had an argument with my fiancée Connie about this, saying that when it was the King's coronation, I was like, they can just make it rain if they want. She was like, no way. So I'm going to tell her to listen to the podcast to hear that.
Yeah, honestly, for about 3 days, it was a struggle, like, getting anywhere because it was raining so much.
No way, that's mad.
I'm sure that was like a week before the games actually kicked off. So then the whole games, it was just sunny. It was awesome.
Wow, that's insane. And then the actual competition, like, can you remember much of that? I can remember trying to watch it on BBC, but we didn't get to see much of qualification. There was only a couple of routines, which was a shame because I was so excited to see you do triple back off rings.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you remember the actual competition?
A little bit. I don't really remember what I was doing or competing because I was in awe of all these gymnasts I've looked up to. Like, I was constantly like looking around, watching people do their routines. Like, my favourite gymnasts were competing.
Yeah.
And really, in my head, I was still a junior. So I was like, wow, look at all these guys. Like, I didn't actually think I'm up here competing with them. And it was so much fun, honestly, watching them, being around them in the village, being around all the different athletes as well that I'd been watching on telly. But it was just crazy, really crazy experience.
What was it like being in that? Did you do the closing ceremony or opening ceremony?
So the opening ceremony, we competed the day after, so we couldn't go to it because you'd be tired from walking around and whatnot.
What was the bird's nest like in that closing ceremony?
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah. It was huge. And to be fair, it was really busy, almost kind of like you'd go to a gig at Wembley or something like that. It was kind of like that. Everyone was down in the middle, just having fun. It was, I don't think about this so much now. But
you should, mate. Yeah. I remember, the one thing I remember from that Olympic Games, was after the competition had finished, Boris Johnson was the mayor of London, and he was doing an interview with BBC News, and he was basically doing this big, like, war cry speech about how he said something like, we invented swish swash and all of this, talking about ping pong and stuff.
Oh my God.
And he was saying all this stuff, and then this is live, like, beaming to the world, because he's talking to the world about London hosting the next Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And you walk out of a door with a drink in your hand, like, just not knowing where you are, in the back of this TV thing, and then just walk back in, and I was going, Dad, that's Dan Keatings, look at him! And you just literally, like, it's a proper big press conference. It must have been outside the TeamGB house. Yeah. You just walked out this door, looked around, seen the TV cameras with your drink, and then just walked back in. Oh, it's so funny.
I don't even remember.
It was brilliant, mate.
I must have just been in my own world, not knowing where I was. I'll have to try and find see if there's a clip or something.
Yeah, there must be somewhere. It's brilliant. I'll never forget that. And then you get back from Beijing. 2009 comes around. This time, at the start of this year, you're a senior now.
Yeah.
That was a really big year for you. Just take me through that year a little bit, and then how you ultimately led up to that World Championships in London.
Where was the Euros in 2009? Milan. So I think I got silver all round there. And at the time, so like Fabian Hambushan, he was like the big guy to try and beat. And I remember we were neck and neck. And I used to do just a single Arabian down the side, and it was my last piece, and it was like, if I just nail this, I've got like a real chance of winning this. and I kicked out and under-rotated it and basically landed on my back. I was like, what am I doing? A single Arabian? Yeah, I was
No way.
for God's sake. But again, I got a silver. It was like I'd gone from junior Euros to Beijing, then I got a silver medal all round in Milan, and then it was like, right, Worlds in London, let's go. And I kind of thought, if I do really well here, I might potentially get a top 6 finish in the all round. And then I think I qualified maybe in 5th or 4th, but I'd had a few mistakes.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. I was like, let's go. And I remember going around with Paul, and Paul was like, just like a squat half on high bar, just make sure you shoot it over a little bit. I was like, I'm going to hit handstand. I was like, I am not losing any temps here. Yeah, wow. I was like, you watch this. And I remember I went like that, and I was like, I bounced and then carried on. I was like, but the thing as well, I had a few head problems at that time, like twisting problems.
Okay.
And I remember in the warm-up pool, so I did double dismount back then on high bar, and I kept doing 2.5 to my back. And that was the last piece before I was going out. I was going 2.5, opening out, landed on my back. I was like, I'm going out in 20 minutes. What's going on? And Paul's just like that. Yeah. So I ended up doing filling back out in the competition. I think I stuck it dead as well. I was just like, yes.
No way. Do you think you were able to do the full in because your arms were straight, maybe, instead of bent?
Yeah.
Or it was just very different? Or
I think...
Because after that, you only ever did back and full out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was more because double, it's a fast movement. Mm. You have to kind of wrap it in, don't you? And whereas filling back out, I could literally just keep my arms by my side and just drop my shoulder like that. It was really relaxed. And 9 times out of 10, I'd stick it there. Double sometimes. If I was tired, I might take a 3/10 step or whatnot. It was just, for the sake of 1/10 on your start score, it was so much easier and safer for me to just do that. Mm.
And so the competition goes really well and you come out with a silver medal. What was that like? I mean, the first British man in history to win an all-around medal.
It was crazy. Like, when I got to high bar, I was thinking I've got a chance here, and Paul was like, Dan, just like keep your nerve, make sure you just overshoot a few things, because if you get through, you're getting a medal. And I was like, nah, if I hit handstand stuff, I'm getting a silver. Because like Uchimura, he was new on the scene, but you couldn't catch him. And then for years after that, you couldn't catch him either. Yeah. So it was all about fighting for them second and third places. And obviously landing that high routine, seeing my score come up, and I think. The Japanese lad fell on floor on his last piece as well, which might have pushed him down into 4th.
Right.
I was just, I've done it. I couldn't believe it. I was looking up into the crowd and I kept seeing like different people. I remember seeing like Luke Folwell and Adam Folwell in the crowd. I just managed to spot them. Seeing my family. Oh, it was brilliant. And then I won the Longines Award as well.
Yeah.
For most elegant gymnast.
Just tell people, for people that don't know, tell people what that is, because it's almost like a hidden... It's like when you're playing Mario Kart and there's like a hidden level. It's like a hidden thing that you can win at World Championships.
Yeah, it's not really like publicised or anything, is it? So Longines do like the scoreboards and stuff around the gym. So like when your pommel score comes up, it'll be done by Longines. And they have an Elegance Award, which is who they think's the most elegant gymnast of that competition. And they'll do a girl and a boy, and they kind of vote on it, I think. And at the end, they present you with a trophy and a Longines watch, which is great.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what you've just described there from 2006, first Commonwealth Games, all the way to 2009, that really is a whirlwind. There's like no time for you to even step back and think about what's going on. I'm guessing that, you know, that you're living your dream, aren't you? And I don't think that really shifted after 2009. You kind of carried on into 2010, and you go into Birmingham, another home championships, and you become the first British man to ever win a pommel gold medal, to win any gold medal at European Championships. Yeah. What was that feeling like? Because in that competition, you're up against Lewis in that competition.
Yeah. So it was like there was just momentum building, and I felt like I had so much confidence. It was like nothing could stop me, and I was like, I'm just going to keep improving, keep getting better. I'm still young. And, you know, you don't usually hit your peak until your mid-20s. I thought, I've got ages left. I'm going to just keep getting better and better. And I had this drive in me to get better as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, another home championships in Europeans. But it was against Lewis, and everyone knows Lewis Smith. Like, he was amazing on pommel. But I was kind of less consistent, not as consistent as Lewis. But if I went through, I didn't have many deductions. So I knew if I could just hit this routine that I had a great chance. And Berkey was there as well, who hadn't really lost before. But again, hitting that routine in the European Championships, getting the gold, it was just like another step in my career in the right direction. I was like, this is going great. Obviously, the main aim is to win that Olympic gold.
Yeah.
I was like, I am on the right track here. This is brilliant.
Yeah. And like, when you're at that point, just give people an idea of just how many pommel routines you guys used to do. Because I can remember when I moved to Huntingdon at 14, 15, I was pretty taken back with the numbers you guys used to do. I can remember in the lead up to Beijing, you had a list on the wall and it was just stupid numbers. Like, we're talking sometimes 10 routines a day.
Yeah, it was like 10 routines a day. Especially, we were young and lighter then as well. As I got older, they became less. But when we were young, you would do probably 10 routines a day, a couple of times a week on pommel. And thinking about that now, it was crazy. But you know what? I'd completely forgot about that list on the wall. I'm sure it was something like we had to do 100 clean routines, clean as in there was no leg splits or anything like that. So sometimes if it was getting close to the competitions and you were behind, it was like, right, I need to do another 2 routines today, get them through. But I think that's what built that consistency as well. And me and Lewis, obviously being at the level we were on pommel, we pushed each other a lot. We always wanted to beat each other, and it just raised our game even more, which was amazing.
And around that time, so you've had all this success, the kind of like atmosphere shifting towards London 2012. I can remember at the time you were getting a lot of sponsorships. You'd started doing the Champions Trophy and winning a lot of money.
Yeah.
I can remember you really being like the person I was looking at going, whoa, he's having a career. Do you know what I mean? It was hard for me to relate to Lewis a little bit because he was like a pommel horse worker. But because you were an all-rounder, I was kind of looking at you going, oh my God, this guy's like going to be famous. Like, this is it. Like, gymnastics, he's putting gymnastics on the map. He's getting these sponsors. He's going out to big competitions, getting paid thousands of pounds. What was that like? And at the time, we were aware of kind of like the pressure building leading into 2012.
Not really. So it was like the pressure hadn't kicked in yet because I'd had all these short-term goals. I was always thinking, right, Euros, Worlds, I need to get this, get that, get this, that. Obviously, London's obviously going to be in the back of your head. But I weren't really thinking about that then. But after Worlds 2009, that's when all the sponsorships came. I think like Adidas signed me up, and then I had 6 or 7 other sponsors as well. They then made the Champions Trophy, which was a brand new competition where you could win. I think you're winning like 10 grand each competition. And that was unheard of in gymnastics. I think the most you win before was like 600 quid or something, roughly like that. So there was big money starting to get involved, and it was making everyone want to do all-round again, which was obviously the pinnacle of gymnastics in it, winning an all-round medal. And I was thinking, because before people used to say, you can't make much money in gymnastics, you can't do this. I was like, yes, you can. If you do well, you can have a career here. You can grow up, you can have all the money in the world, and it was brilliant.
I always remember that about you. I always remember if you ever wanted someone to join in a game you were playing, you just say, Dan, I bet you can't do this. And you were so easy to get you to do something because then you go, I bet I can, and then you go and do it.
I'm the most competitive person in the world.
Big time.
It was a good trait, but also a bad trait as well, because I think it's probably why I had so many injuries, because I could do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, someone would be like, yeah, you can't do that, Dan. I bet I can. And I would try until I did it.
Do you think early on in your career that was a massive positive? Like, it just helped you?
Yeah, I think that's why I did so much so early as a junior. I had no fear, and I would try stuff. I think I grew quickly as well. I was always bigger than everyone, and I was kind of stronger as a junior as well. Like, kind of maybe hit puberty a bit earlier, which helped. So I could try all these big skills and whatnot. And I'm very persistent as well. If I wanted something, even now, which is terrible, it's like if I want something, I go and get it. Like even that, like with a car or with some shoes or with anything, it's like I put all every bit of effort into it and go and get it.
Just like tunnel vision. Yeah, like hyper focus on it. So you get to the end of 2010, you've got all these sponsors coming in now after 2009. We go into 2011, big year before the Olympic Games. Just talk to me a little bit about that experience in Tokyo. I know you missed out on the Europeans that year.
Yeah.
That's the year I came into the team, made my debut. Yeah. Just tell me a little bit about that and what you remember from it.
So, if we go back to 2010 after Birmingham, going into the Worlds again, obviously I was the world silver medalist. I was thinking, right, how am I going to improve? Because you always want to improve, and the next step was winning. It's like, right, how am I going to catch Uchimura? So I went back into the gym and just started trying all these different things. And I was trying double Arabian punch into straight front or a straight full, and I landed on straight legs and snapped my ACL, and that put me out for, I think it was 11 months.
Did you have surgery or not?
Yeah, so I had surgery. Had to learn to walk again. It was crazy. So I think the Euros next year I'd started doing things, but I wasn't ready. Like, I couldn't land properly still and whatnot. I was just about there. But then I'd got back. I remember we did a competition against Spain in South Essex, and it was one of my first ones back. And there was loads of us in the team, and I think I scored something like 92 back then, in maybe 92.5. I'd went perfectly clean, and I was like, right, I'm ready. I'm going to take on Ushimura.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing was built up like, I remember in magazines and online and stuff, it was Dan's back, Uchimura versus Dan in Tokyo. Was it in Tokyo?
Yeah,
it was Tokyo.
Tokyo Worlds.
In Tokyo. How's it going to be? Obviously, it was terrible. Had the worst competition. I don't know if I'd put too much pressure on myself after having a year out.
Were you starting to feed into the stuff in the magazines and that, maybe for the first time?
Massively, yeah. And it's...
You'd almost... That kid that had no fear and didn't think and was just kind of in the moment, it kind of was maturing into like a young adult, and then...
Yeah, all of a sudden there was pressure because I was now somebody. Before, I was the young kid, the new kid on the block, coming in, no pressure on my shoulders. I'm just going out. If I get a medal, everyone's like, who's this guy? And then now I was the world silver medalist, European gold medalist. It was like, right, Dan's going to do something here.
Yeah.
And I felt that pressure. But I almost put it on myself as well to do, like, really, I should have gone there, been happy making finals, potentially a bronze medal. But I'm going there like, I'm going to challenge, I'm going to go for it, blah, blah, all this kind of stuff. Putting too much pressure on myself, I think.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started getting really nervous and whatnot. I had to tell
I can remember you telling me once, like, I never want to have a good podium training. If I'm having a perfect podium training, I'll fall off on purpose, like in the last piece. Yeah. And I can remember thinking, what? Like, you have a good podium, you've got a good podium. But I can remember around that time, I very clearly remember being in a hotel room after the qualification and you just watching everybody score. And me thinking at 18, I'm not sure that's a good thing to do. I don't know the answer to it because I was still young, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Do you know that time that you describe, and it was an awful period and being stuck in those hotel rooms, and do you look back at that and think that that was quite an influential period on then the rest of your career?
Yes, massively, because that was the first time I'd ever really had a bad competition, and it put that kind of self-doubt in me, and it was more like I wanted to kind of prove to myself, prove to everybody else, that was just a blip. But then there was more pressure. It was like I was putting pressure on myself, and it's like I don't want to do what I did last time. And it's like, right, what can I do to not do it the same as last time? Even in competitions, it's like, right, I'd think back to when I fell. I was like, I'm not going to do that again. But really, I shouldn't have even thought about that. I should have been positive, because it's there. It's like a seed in your mind that grows when you're under pressure, under stress. But yeah, I remember saying that about podium. Do you know, the only good podium I've ever had was Tokyo Worlds.
Really?
And I had a nightmare competition. Usually I'd have like 3 or 4 falls, but for me, podium was more about feeling the apparatus. If I fell, I don't care, feel good, I'll get up, do the skill again. I'd rather do almost half routines or a bit of a messy routine, something like that, just to feel the apparatus. But yeah, the only competition I had was, but I didn't know if that's because I wanted to, everyone's like, he's back, so it's like, right, I'm going to show everyone I'm back in podium.
Yeah.
Did ace. Like, because we used to get judged, didn't we?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I scored like high 91s there as well. And in podium, which was like a big score back then. And it was like more just to be like, yeah, Dan's back, ready for the competition. But it was this whole build-up, and I put too much pressure on myself.
What was it? What was the response like? Because we all went to have individual meetings with the coaching staff after that competition. What do you remember of that, and how fair do you think what the conversation that was coming back at you was at that time? Did you start to feel some pressure from people outside of just yourself? Yeah,
so I remember having a big meeting with the big guys in British Gymnastics, and they sat me down, and the first thing I went, what's wrong? I was like, what? what's wrong? Why did you do that? Why did you fall on so many pieces? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I can't answer that. Like, and at the time as well, we're all thinking, how's this gone so wrong? Because as a team, we were building as well. Like, we were starting to do really good.
Yeah.
And I remember from everyone as well, it was like, what are you doing? Why have you done this? Like, and because we didn't make the top 8, meant we didn't get automatic qualification for the Olympics as well. So there was obviously pressure from the higher ups on them as well, but still it was like, no, you need to do better, you need to do this, you need to do that. So not only was I putting pressure on myself, I was getting pressure from everyone else as well to do good.
I even remember a story of a physio before your P-bars routine having a conversation with you that was almost technically based on a routine, and thinking, what has just happened there? That's right?
Yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
I remember being like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you don't really have the qualifications to tell me what to do, but you kind of ignore that anyway.
Yeah.
I just remember thinking, right, just go out and do your thing, Dan.
Yeah. The whole thing was just a bit of a mess, wasn't it? It was just all a mess, like, from top to bottom.
And I think because it took everybody by surprise, like, took us by surprise, took the coaches, the medical staff, even people higher up, they were all just like, what has just happened?
Yeah.
Like, we were building and suddenly we weren't going to the Olympics.
Well, they flew us out on, like, first class, didn't they? They flew us out on first class and we were back in economy on the way back.
Yeah.
That's how confident they were that we were going to, qualify that spot straight away. But it was a mad time, mate. But so then you get past that. Christmas is coming around as a test event. At what point did you injure your ankles?
So I did test event. Obviously, we did really well. And I remember I reduced all of my routines. So I remember Eddie saying, right, we're going to put you up first, Dan, on every single piece. You're going to be the person that lays the foundation. Take a little bit off my routine, just to make sure I'll go through. But get it, obviously, we all did really well there. And then I'm pretty sure, so that was January, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it was February I'd done my ankles.
Okay.
So when we got back, it was then a little bit of a rest and then back into routines ready for Euros. And it was, I remember, I think I was doing it in the order that I was going to be on at the British or something like that. So I had floor last. And I think we were doing like 3 routines. It was that period where you're just trying to get fitness. And I was knackered. I'd had a bad day. I remember getting to floor and I was like, Paul, I do not feel good. Like, I feel almost dangerous. And I warmed up a double-double and I landed on my side. And I was like, yeah, this isn't good. And he was like, nah, Dan, you've got to get it done. I was like, can I not just go to tumble just for today? I'll come back this afternoon and maybe do a floor routine. So no, got to get it done. Did my first routine, had about 3 falls. I was like, Paul, I really need to stop. It's like, nah, get it done. We won't do 3 routines. We'll do 2 routines, just 1 more. So I did double-double. And then my second tumble was 2.5 punch full. And my 2.5, I've landed with both ankles rolled. Still did a punch front out of it as well. And I was just like, I felt sick instantly because I felt them snap. And got took to hospital. And I think you've got 3 ligaments on the outside of your ankle. I'd snapped all 3 of them on my right and I'd snapped 2 and partially snapped 1 on my left. And I was like, oh no, like this is 5 months before the Olympics.
Yeah.
So wow, I've got to try and get over this. And I got offered the operation and they said, if you get an operation, you ain't going to Olympics. So I basically wore boots for 6 weeks and then strapped them all these they were like weird supports that are laced up. Do you remember Ruslan used to wear them?
Yeah, and it had like a metal rod at the back.
Yeah.
Or the sides that kept you...
Yes, and they basically acted as your ligaments. But my ankles were never the same since then. Even now, I roll my ankle doing the grass or whatever. It was crazy.
It's funny you say that, mate, and that decision to, right, do I get the operation or do I, and as a young, how old were you then?
So I would have been 20.
So at 20, you're not thinking about your future.
Yeah.
You're just thinking about the Olympic Games, aren't you, next week?
Because it was a home games as well.
Yeah, it was
like, that doesn't come round. Yeah.
No.
My whole thing from Beijing was, even in Beijing, it was like, right, this is just experience for London.
Yeah.
And then the whole build-up, like, obviously it was building momentum up to 2012, which was the home game. So everything was literally tunnel visioned on 2012.
Yeah. How on earth did you even get back to do that British? Like, from February to June. That was June. How did you even do that?
I don't know. Like, I think it was more just, I need to get back. I think I did basics on floor and vault. Because I remember, so Euros, I made the European team, but then I got asked, but I did a straight full on vault. straight full on vault and a basic floor routine, everything landing forwards. And I remember I got asked to pull myself out because they were like, look, you're doing basics on floor and vault. You've qualified individually, but this is like a team. We need this as the team. So I was like, yeah, sound. It gives me a chance to...
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow. So how do you feel about that now?
Yeah, rubbish.
Right.
Because I remember...
Do you think that was a move, or what, did you think they genuinely had the team's best interests at heart? They obviously didn't have yours, potentially, but do you mean at that time, do you think...
I don't know, because at the time I was still...
That's amazing. I didn't know that, mate.
Like,
so.
Up the top, and like I'd got all my routines back apart from floor and vault.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it was, right, give Dan a little bit of extra time. There's none of this pressure to do a competition and whatnot. You can get floor and vault back for Olympics. Or if it was a move, like you said. But I remember then, once I pulled out, I remember Andre saying to me, you don't know if they win gold, you ain't going Olympics. This was before they went Euros. And I was like, so I went and said my piece to someone. I was like, you sure that's not going to happen? And they were like, no, don't worry, that's silly, he's just talking nonsense. And I remember one of the reasons I got given to why I didn't make the team was because of the gold medal in Euros. I was like, nah.
Oh, mate.
Yeah,
wow.
It is what it is, it's in the past. Right?
And how was that? That experience, I was there with you at that time. That British Championships, you did incredibly well. Third at the British Championships.
Yeah.
Scored over 90 again. It must have been a tough phone call.
Yeah, it's like, I remember listening to Courtney's interview with you, podcast with you, and he was saying about how it was like a 20-second phone call.
Is that what you got as well?
Yeah. It was
really?
Like, all right, Dan, how you doing? It's like, yeah, good, thanks. And you're nervous, but you're excited at the same time. It's like, yeah, you've not made the team. I was like, what?
And then that's pretty much was it.
Yeah, and I was like, how do I appeal it? And
I mean, I haggled him. So
Yeah.
I was like, you got to give me a reason now.
Yeah.
I rang back. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not accepting that reason. You need to give me a proper reason. At 20 seconds, if you think you've spent your whole career working for that moment, a 20-second phone call, that's just...
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
like
you deserve better than that, don't you, in that situation? That's...
Yeah, I remember straight away I told Steph, and I told my mum and dad, and then I was like, right, I'm ringing Paul. Rang Paul. I was like, right, what are we doing? How are we appealing this? Blah, 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 all this. Because I think we had a pretty good appeal, to be fair. Because I think it was over like 2 years, the process to get selected for the Olympics. And you had to hit, I think it was like a 15.5, so many times and whatnot. And I think it worked out, I'd hit it like 60-something times, the score. It was like the most out of anybody. So that was like my appeal was based on and whatnot. Mm. And I'd done a couple of World Cups since I'd done my ankles as well and scored 15.6, 15.7. So it wasn't just like it was before my injuries. So my whole appeal was kind of based on that. But there was something in the...
Do you remember what came back as like the reasoning for not going, aside from the gold medal at the Europeans? Because that didn't really stand up, right? Because I went and I wasn't there at the Europeans.
Yeah, that's all he said to me.
Right.
Yeah, and I was like, hey...
Did you get anything back after the appeal? Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, the only thing I got back from was like a letter saying, I can't remember. It was one of the points in like the terms and conditions, which was something like, no matter about your previous results, the technical director has the final decision on the team.
That small print at the bottom.
Yeah, that
kind of
rules
voids
out
everything.
Anything. Yeah. So my whole appeal was based on scores, but that one thing takes that away basically. So my appeal was rubbish.
How difficult was it, mate? Number one, being at that holding camp in France and watching everybody train. Number two, having a club teammate that's gone to achieve his dream.
Yeah. That
is in your gym and it's there in your face 24/7. How tough is that mentally to just handle that situation? So
I remember it was horrible. I remember straight away, I can't remember if was that like a Monday or something like that. And then I think we went to Lillyshaw on the Tuesday for like a camp because I was reserve. And straight away we were doing routines. I remember, right, I think I might have even won the control comp or something like that. I won the control comp all round and I went, right, I'm pulling out. And because I had a bad wrist at the time, my wrist kept swelling up and I was like, I'm not going to compete. Like, no one's pulling out of this team. So it's get myself sorted, ready for next year. So in a way, it was almost, I took myself away from that whole situation so I could kind of process it. But at the same time, I got surgery on my wrist. I got sorted out. I knew I wouldn't really have to be doing competitions again until the year after. And pommel was my thing, and I was struggling to do pommel with my wrist. It was hurting. I couldn't do the numbers that I wish I could. So that's the decision I made, really, and I think it helped a lot.
I do have to say, like, looking back, mate, you were an absolute, like, credit at that time to handle that situation. You know, it would have been quite easy for you to just ignore everybody, you know, just not want to be there, but you did your job as a reserve. And I think
the thing is, it wasn't on you guys. You guys are my friends as well, like almost like family. Like, so I wanted you to do well. I just wanted to be part of that as well. So I still came and watched you at the competition, but I just wish I was down there with you, kind of thing. Yeah.
So you know, you get up to 2012, and like those injuries are starting to pile up now. And one thing I did want to ask you was, you know, yesterday it came out, the interview with Dele Alli, and he starts talking about sleeping tablets. And I remember around that time, there was a real bunch of us that were just knocking painkillers like they were Skittles.
Yeah.
And I remember you being one of them.
Yeah.
And you also used to take Firmabol. Was it Firmabol?
Firmabol.
I remember you taking that like every day. Just talk to me a little bit about like just that time period between probably, you know, that first knee injury in 2010 to 2012, and just how that really impacted your mental health, but also why you think that whole group of us would turn into just taking painkillers. And because you wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't let your kids do that, would you?
No,
do you know what I mean?
Not at all, yeah. So my whole thing was I'd had a lot of injuries, and they were big injuries as well. So I'd be out for half a year. But even in that half a year, I was at the top of my game when I got injured. Half a year went on, everyone's improved, but I'm still trying to get back to where I was. So I'd be trying to get back quicker, not doing the proper rehab that I should have been doing. And then I'd end up getting injured again because I wasn't quite ready. And it was just like a cycle like that. So to get through things, I was just popping painkillers. It was like there was no time, because there's only like 5 in a team, 6 in a team. So you didn't want to let anyone take your spot. So it was all about getting back. I think that's why everyone was taking painkillers, to make sure they didn't have time off, so nobody had the chance to catch up with everybody.
Yeah.
I think it was that kind of culture of being worried you're going to miss out. And in the end, it's probably been detrimental to me, because I had more injuries than I probably should have, just not being ready for things.
Yeah. And what was it? The Firmabol? Was that like a caffeine thing?
Yeah, so it was like, I think it was like a weight loss tablet or something like that. But I used it more for the caffeine instead of Pro Plus. Like, you know, the days when it's hard.
Yeah. God, I remember Pro Plus. Everyone was doing that.
Everyone was popping Pro Plus, weren't they?
Crazy, yeah.
So I think it had like, in a tablet of Firmabol, it had like 200 milligrams of caffeine. So I'd almost use it just for the caffeine side of things, mainly. But it also helped with my, because you cut weight a little bit, don't you, on the way to competitions. So I'd start popping them then.
Yeah. So physically, you're kind of struggling a little bit at that point. You're getting a lot of injuries. But how were you mentally after 2012? Like, did you even acknowledge the feelings that you had? You know, we chatted to Courtney last week. He kind of said, I just ignored it, put it to one side.
Oh, mate,
Were you aware of how you were feeling? Like,
yeah. I was bad. One of the reasons, so I proposed to Steph in 2012. One of the reasons I did was because she helped me get through it. And it was like, I was in a dark place, real dark place. And she got me through it, literally picked me up from the floor. And it was like, right, yeah, I'm staying with you for the rest of my life because you've got me through this. Like, it was terrible. But then that was probably for about 3 or 4 months. I remember like days I couldn't get out of my bed. Like, I was really depressed. I was like, I didn't know what to do. Eventually got back into the gym and started focusing on the next year. And it was like, right, I'm going to prove everybody I should have made that team kind of thing.
Yeah. And then 2013, you go on and you do just that, and you become European champion again on pommel. What was that feeling like? Was it a bit of kind of like redemption for yourself, just personally?
Yeah, and almost, are you allowed to swear on this?
You can do what you want, mate.
It was like a fuck you to everybody who doubted me or didn't select me. It was so I went there, beat Berkey and Max on pommel. Max was the bronze medalist and Berkey was the gold medalist. And I went there and beat them both, and I was like, yeah, like this is me. I'm back. Yeah, it was I knew myself I could do it.
Yeah.
It was more proving to everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still here. Don't forget about me, kind of thing.
And then you carry on. We go into 2014, and you have a great year in 2014. Just take me through that year from start to kind of then the World Championships, because I want to like really dive into that a little bit. Just tell me about that.
So, Euros. Did we we come second?
Came second. There's that famous picture of all of us looking at the Russian team on
Yeah,
first spot.
it's the first time we'd been beaten for a while.
And that
it?
was put in the gym.
Yeah.
It was like, don't do this again type thing, which is...
I remember
that was so much, that was that
wall,
culture on it back then. It
Yeah.
it was interesting. Like it was just our fault.
I know, yeah.
Like, not like you've won a silver medal, let's celebrate it.
I remember it even in that competition, this is what I hate about gymnastics as well. I did the exact same routine that I'd won the Euros with the year before, and there was no mistakes, no nothing. Yeah, there might be a couple of temps difference here and there. I scored 8 temps lower than what I scored, and I didn't make the final. I was like, how have I just done a clean routine and not made the final? And at the time, I was one of the best in the world. But that's how judgmental gymnastics can be. If you're on a panel on a apparatus where there's a panel that don't really like your team,
Yeah.
instead of 1 temps, they can give you 3 temps or something.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
It does work like that as well. People like to pretend it doesn't. I know exactly how it works. It's you're my mate, I'm your mate, and we'll
Yeah.
stick together, and those 1/10 start to add up. You know,
Yeah.
it's a subjective sport. It's like boxing. How many times do you watch a boxing fight or a UFC fight and you're like, that's
Yeah.
not what I saw. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
There's 10 moves that get deducted, isn't there? So if you're getting 3s instead of 1s, that adds up. That's the difference between a gold medal and 15th or something like that. It is crazy. I mean, I don't even know how you even get around that either.
Yeah.
There's no way. I've tried to rack my brain about it, but there's
Yeah.
nothing.
And then you go after that European Championship, so we get the silver medal. We're all back in the gym. Team's doing really well at that point. Going to Commonwealth Games. Just talk to me a bit about the Commonwealth Games, because for me, that's probably one of my favourite. I've said this to you before. It was the most proud I've been of anybody else competing.
Yeah.
It
So
was-
Commonwealth was amazing. Obviously, competing for Scotland in Glasgow, the whole thing was this was the home games that I never got. This is my London 2012. So everything was geared towards that, and I was like, right, I'm going to get my all round back as well. And I hadn't done all round for 2 years since the British in 2012, and it was incredible. Like, honestly, I had probably one of the best competitions I've ever had, apart from P-bars, which I could have done a little bit better. I absolutely smashed it. Got silver in the all-round, which I never expected before that either. And then obviously one pommel beating Lewis and Max. Do you know what? Like I said to you in Tokyo, I remember people speaking about Dan versus Uchimura, and I'm going to do this, started putting pressure on myself. It was exactly the same in the Commonwealths in Glasgow, but it was Max versus Lewis.
and that chip on your shoulder.
And I'm like, hang on a minute. I was like, if I go through, I'm going to be up there. I was like, you know what? I'm going to win this. Fuck you guys. Like, I am going to win this. This is going to be incredible if I do it as well. And obviously I went out and I did my hard. I remember in the all-round as well, Paul went, just do your safe routine. I was like, Paul, I've been going through 5 routines clean every day at Lillishore. It's like, I ain't falling. In the all-round, I did it as good as I did it in the final as well. I was so confident. I was like, I ain't falling. I can't fall. And absolutely smashed it. I remember, that you see it in a video if you watch it on YouTube now. I finished, I'm in dismount and handstand like this, and I'm smiling already. I'm literally just like, I've done it.
Yeah.
Oh, it was incredible. It was a big stadium as well, and obviously everyone's there chanting your name and whatnot. Oh, it was brilliant. Really good.
That was amazing, mate. And you were getting better. You know, you were doing Coleman on high bar and training Cassinas. Like, your gymnastics was improving, you know. And
Yeah.
2014? How old were you in 2014?
24. Yeah.
24, that's young.
Yeah.
You know, do you look back at that time now, put yourself where you were, and do you feel like you almost felt like, oh, this is like the end of my career? Do you know what I mean? When actually, now you're like, 24 so young, you know?
Yeah, I did. I felt like... So after the Commonwealths, it was almost like there was a big weight lifted off my shoulders. And I was just so happy with where I was. And like you said, I felt like I was kind of coming towards the end of my career. It wasn't the Olympics, but it was the home games, and I'd done it. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. But obviously, there was still a long way to go. And thinking about now, like, people are going until their mid-30s. So I probably still had 10 years left if I could play it right. But it is what it is.
Just that all or nothing type mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Big risk, big reward.
yeah, I'm very much like that.
Yeah.
It's if I can't do it properly, then I ain't going to do it at all, kind of thing.
So after Commonwealth Games, you come back, you're on a massive high. You're like one of the top guys in the team right now. You go into the World Championships in China. Talk to me about that experience, because there's a lot that I heard following that event. And, you know, you've just described being in Glasgow in the summer, being full of confidence, feeling like you're back. How did that, just talk to me about that experience, the competition, the atmosphere, what it was like. Tell me about that famous conversation that I've heard about that happened in a bar and how that impacted your self-confidence.
So the Worlds in general, I was tired. I think it's not often you do 3 competitions in a year, 3 big competitions. And I don't know if Commonwealth's being on such a high, I then dipped after. Like, I remember in podium trying an Azarian on rings and I couldn't do it. I was so weak, I was so tired. I did all right in the competition, to be fair. I think I qualified first on pommel, but then I made a little mistake in the final. I didn't fall. I think I still scored like 15-2 or something. And I've seen people medal with that.
Yeah.
And I was first up, a little split in my legs, but I was like, that's not too bad. I've not fell or anything.
Yeah.
But then everyone did the most perfect routines they've ever done after me. It's sod's law.
Yeah.
It just happened. But then it was after that there was a conversation in the bar that my mum and dad were in and overheard, and it was like, basically, need to get Dan out of the team. We need to push through some youngsters and stuff like that. Straight away, everything that happened in 2012 is coming back to me. And I usually am a pretty positive person, but I started getting really negative. Any little thing I heard, because everyone in gymnastics talks, don't they? People talk behind your back and whatnot. There's a lot of politics. But then everything I did hear, instead of going, I'm going to prove you wrong, it was, oh my God, like, they're trying to push me out. I need to do this. Started putting pressure on myself again, like in Tokyo. And that's when, like in training, you know them days when you don't want to train, but you got to do it. They're the tough days that you get through. They were then very easy, like, he's not going to pick me anyway. So then training, it started being a struggle. I started being kind of a bit mopey in training, moping around if I was tired. If I was energetic, I was fine. I was still doing the best stuff in my life. But them days come around more often than not, and it's 2-3 times a week. I was like, nah. I was like, I'm done with this sport. Like, no one's going to select me anyway, even if I do well, kind of thing. It was terrible.
How difficult was it to be around those people after that? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you had that experience a little bit post 2012. But how tough was that? You know, these people that ultimately, you know, they pull the strings and they pick the team and they're saying, we want to kick him out of the team. He's too old at 24.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
How does that feel then, having to go and train with the GB squad? It must be really isolating.
Yeah, it was. And it was good because I was with you guys. You guys were my mates, and I kind of took focus off the coaches. But at the end of the day, you still need a coach. And I was ignoring them because I was like, nah, you ain't got my best interest at heart. So I was just kind of doing my own thing in training and whatnot. And then, like I said, it was fine on the days I felt good, but then days where things ain't going right and whatnot, and you look around and you can see people kind of giving you an eye or shaking their head. And you're like, this is just another bit of ammo for them not to select me. And it just built up. Really, I should have been like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Yeah. But I think because it had happened to me before, I'd got so negative and down about the whole situation that it really affected me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's probably why I ended up finishing in the end.
Yeah, I imagine you just start to believe it a little bit.
Yeah, I did. I believed I weren't going to get selected for anything, no matter how well I did. And I knew I was still good, but then I probably I weren't putting in the numbers that I should have been because I was like, what's the point? Which then probably showed, like, competition started getting harder to get through. Like, I'd get to the end of the routine and I was feeling I was blowing. And usually in a competition, you're like, fit as a fiddle, isn't you? So, it killed it for me. Like, I was basically done.
What happened after that? Was there any recourse? Was there any... It was just put to one side?
Yeah, it was just put to one side. Like, I remember because I was centralised at the time. And then I think I did another year there. And I was like, nah. And then I went back to Huntingdon with Paul because I knew Paul would want my best interest at heart.
Yeah.
But then my heart weren't really in it. Like, the days that I was tired, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do much today, stuff like that. And in the end, I've kind of gone from here, dwindled out, then left.
When did you then make the decision to retire, Dan? Like, what was that? What was the leading factor in you deciding, this is it, I've had enough, I'm going to retire?
So I remember having a conversation with, I think it was with Eddie, and it was like, I was a big influence in the gym. If I'm doing well, everybody else is picking themselves up and doing well. And I remember him saying, like, we need you just to keep the team spirits high and whatnot. So I remember thinking, all right, let's do it. Let's give it a go. This last year, 2016, I was like, I'll do it. I'll train hard. I'll make sure that's happening. But I'm done. Like, once that's over, it's like I'm finishing. So for 6 months, I trained hard, did my stuff, but then I started picking up some more injuries and stuff, which then led me to go, yeah, I'm definitely finishing once the Olympics is over.
Yeah. And was 2016 just a very different experience? Was it easier for you to just be like, it wasn't supposed to be for me?
Yeah. So I knew I weren't going in January. I think it was. Like, I was told, like, no matter what happens, I'm probably not going. And I knew that in myself anyway.
Yeah.
Like, because for the last year I hadn't trained as hard as I should have. Then that shows in your results because you're making mistakes. You're not as fit as you should have been. And then were you in the Worlds the year before, the Worlds team?
Yeah, I wasn't in the Worlds team. I was in the B team with you. Can you remember? We did that control comp.
Yeah, because we were like, we're going to beat the A team.
Yeah, we're going to try and beat the A team.
But yeah, I knew that because they got a medal, didn't they?
Yeah, they medalled. Yeah, they got second.
So when that happened, I was like,
not going to happen.
Yeah, it's similar situation to the European gold. It's like, right, they've just got a silver at Worlds. That's probably going to be the team. So I was like, I'm not going to make it then. But then, like I said, I trained for a bit just to try and help you guys, and then that was it. Yeah.
So then you decide to retire. The Olympics comes and goes. You get married. I remember being at your wedding, amazing day, being there with everybody. Your life moves on. At what point did you then decide, hang on a minute, I'm going to stick up for myself a little bit here? And then you came forward to talk about your experiences.
So the worst thing about gymnastics is everyone is kind of scared to say anything because they'll lose their place on the team. I went through it where you keep your mouth shut for years, even though things are getting said. Everyone's. I think the only people that didn't do it was Lewis, but Lewis had all these medals to kind of back him up, and he was consistently getting medals. If he was in the team, he'd get a pommel medal. And then there was Theo, and it kind of ruined Theo's career a bit saying it. So everyone was like, nah, don't want to jeopardise anything. I was then not in the sport, and I think a few of the lads were tweeting about, was there a contract or something?
Yeah, there's a contract that came about. There was a contract dispute, which interestingly, the head national coach told us to dispute.
Oh, really?
Which was quite interesting, yeah. I'd felt at that point that following 2016, the appeals from me, Dan Purvis, that the CEO and the head national coach at the time were kind of at loggerheads.
Yeah.
So I think it was a bit more that than him actually being bothered about what was in it for us in the contracts. But that was the conversation that took place. And then I remember the younger gymnasts coming to me and talking to me a little bit about it. Yeah. And that was around the same time that...
Because I remember everyone started tweeting stuff. I think it was more because you weren't happy with what was going on. So he's tweeted something small, like, you're not accepting these contracts. That's terrible, basically. And I think all I put was, finally the lads are sticking up for themselves. It's great to hear, something like that. That's all I put, and it blew up massively. And I was like, you know what? I ain't in the sport anymore. There's nothing can jeopardise me. What have I got anything to worry about? Let's just tell my truth. So then reporters everywhere were ringing me and stuff like that, and I just told them exactly my whole story, which was good, because I think it changed a lot as well. Well, I'm not in it anymore. I'm hoping it's changed a lot.
Yeah. From what I've heard it has, I think I do look back at that time, and I was a very young man, but I do think in your situation, as far as I'm concerned, it was across the line and it was bullying, and I felt that you got singled out a lot. Yeah. And it was almost like just almost taking the piss out of you at times. I think you were the first person that clearly now, you've said that in 2012 you were really struggling with depression and your mental health. Yeah. And I think someone like me looked at the way they dealt with you, and I went, there is no way I can talk to anybody about what I'm dealing with, because what's happening to Dan now is just going to happen to me. Yeah. And there was a real attitude of, if you go see a sports psychologist, or if you're struggling mentally, we ain't going to put you on the team.
Yeah, you're weak, kind of thing.
Yeah. And so, I do look back at that. Is that how you would describe it? Would you describe it as bullying? I personally would.
Yeah, massively.
Just being there.
And everyone I've spoke to about this have said the same. So I think I remember speaking to Purvis, because I shared a room with Purvis quite a lot. There'd be times we'd be back from training and he'd be like, "You all right?" I'd be like, yeah, sound. He'd be like, "That's like bang out of order what's been said to you today or what's happened. Like I was told to go and train by myself," stuff like that. It's like, what is going on? I'm getting segregated from everyone. I didn't know if it was a move to try and...
Do you think that was maybe a knock-on to what happened in China? Do you think it was maybe because you then came out and spoke about what happened with that conversation, it was like, well, let's cut them out now? Because that's how I felt after 2016.
Yeah.
Like, after I appealed that decision, it was like,
yeah,
well, we need to keep him quiet as quick as we can, type thing.
Yeah, I do, massively.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to the whole thing, everyone's scared to say anything because they've seen what's happened if you do.
It was incredibly brave, mate. Honestly, if I look back now and 2020 comes around, the Me Too movement starts, particularly on the men's side, none of that would have happened without you being brave in 2018 before anybody else did.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you were retired, but you're still, you know...
So it made it a lot easier for me to...
But also, you've moved on with your life. You don't want that drama and that. So you really did do an incredibly positive thing for I guess the kids that looked up to you, to be honest.
Yeah.
I regard myself as one of them. It was incredibly brave what you did, and it massively changed a lot of things. For me, anyway, it just gave me a bit of confidence to go, do you know what? Like,
yeah,
I'm just going to tell the truth, because as long as I tell the truth, I'm not doing anything wrong.
What's going to happen? Yeah,
you know?
I think my whole thing was the people still in the sport, my friends still, and I didn't want them to go... So in 2018, I'd only just got over kind of what had happened to me in them 4 years. And I was then thinking, I don't want my friends to go through exactly what I've just been through. So if anything, I'm going to say something to stick up for them so it doesn't happen to them again. That was my whole reasoning behind doing it. Like I say, I speak to everyone now and again, but it's not really about that. I don't really speak about gymnastics when I'm catching up with people now.
I was going to say, how do you feel now about the sport? Like, when you sit here now and you think about gymnastics, and what are the feelings that you've got, like, with the sport? Are you able to... You kind of mentioned at the start, you don't really look back at, like, your early career.
Yeah.
Like, are you able to kind of bring yourself back a little bit and go, oh my God, I had such an incredible career, and just see the good stuff?
Yeah.
Or is it difficult? Is that tough?
When I first retired, I left on a real sour note. So... Like, I hated gymnastics. It was a shame because it was my favourite sport, but I hated it for a good 2 and a bit years. I remember saying to Chris, actually, the COVID Olympics was the first gymnastics competition I'd watched since I retired that I enjoyed. It wasn't feeling resentment towards anything. I was just enjoying the sport again.
Yeah.
And I feel like that now. I enjoy it. It's probably why I'm taking my lad to gymnastics this weekend. Like, I'm actually enjoying the sport again, because it's been a long time now and I'm over them. Like, them feelings now, I'm kind of like, they're numb.
I think for me as well, I often think that people are people. It doesn't matter what walk of life you're in.
Yeah.
It's the same. You'd think, right, on paper, well, every doctor and every policeman and every nurse is going to be a saint. It's not. It's just people are people. And I think, you know, you're inherently just such a good guy that there is a way to, like, do the sport in the right way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to be strong and have, like, good principles, good morals. You can do it. Like, it's tough because the way the system's kind of intertwined and built, it kind of, in my opinion, values and rewards the wrong things, you know?
Yeah. There has to be a way. I think there's always going to be politics when it's a kind of subjective sport in terms of the judging and things like that. So there's always going to be politics involved when there's trials and things like that. It's hard to explain unless you're in the sport, isn't it? Like, you know what goes on. Like, if the team's kind of pre-selected before all the trials, and normally, I mean, I've been on the good side of it as well, not just the bad.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're getting really big scores and you're like, yes. But then it can go the other way when you're getting scores less than you should have because of that subjectiveness. And without changing that, I don't see how it can change massively.
Yeah.
And I've tried to rack my brain, and there's no real way of doing it, because it's not like sprinting first across the line.
Yeah.
It's, like you say, it's like boxing, when people can kind of choose when they're getting points and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's hard. But the one thing I wish there was when I retired was some sort of help in moving on to a different career. It's kind of like, all right, you've retired, see you later. And then you're sat there and you're like, oh, what am I going to do now?
You were the first person I think I first clocked on. I was old enough to like really think about what was happening around me, that it felt like, oh, when you're done, see ya.
Yeah.
That's it. You're not useful to us. As soon as you can't win medals, that's it.
Yeah.
And then I saw that again with Dan Purvis.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me a bit of a wake-up call to, right, you need to look after yourself when you're done, because no one's going to help you.
Yeah. Like, I've also tried thinking about this, like, if there was something in place where they could make the transition easier, where there's help to get you into a different job or work in life or something like that, like, I'd set it up.
Mate, I even had to pay for my coaching qualifications. That's nuts.
Did ya?
That's crazy, isn't it? Like, if you think about it like this, there's probably been maybe 50 men and women in the last 15 years that have won major championship medals.
Yeah.
How many of them are coaching? Can you think of one?
No.
Not in the traditional elite pathway, right? There's a reason for that, you know? So people should be sitting back and going, why don't they want to give back to the sport? How can we encourage them to get back into it? Because once that knowledge is gone, it's gone, right? Like,
exactly.
No one knows what it was like to be Dan Keatings and win the first all-around World Championship medal. No one knows that. Like, only you know that.
Yeah.
And you've got so much to give and offer that does upset me a lot, I think. And it is something that it's just smart. Forget whether it's the right thing to do. It's just smart as a business, long-term plan.
Yeah.
Let's keep these people in the sport. You know, they're going to be the next generation. But hopefully that will change me. And, you know, just hearing your story today, like, I've heard so many things that I didn't know, I wasn't aware of, you know, and there's nowhere for us to really go. And like you say, we wouldn't have been able to do a podcast like this 5 years ago, or you're still competing, right?
Yeah,
it just wouldn't have happened. So, thanks for just being so honest and open today.
Yeah, that's all right.
Talking about Elijah then, how has he changed your life? How's being a dad completely changed your life? And did that give you a new level of perspective that almost made it easier to push the gymnastics to one side?
Yeah, I don't know if that has what's helped heal my gymnastics, because I'm not thinking about it anymore. Everything now is geared towards him. I'm thinking about, right, what am I going to do with Elijah? Even like at the weekend, where can we take him? Where can we go have some fun? Like, because you don't even have to take him to clubs and stuff. There's parks and whatnot. Like, we've got a little skate park outside near us. And we're like, right, get him on his scooter. Let's try, see if he likes this. And I'm trying him every different sport he can, because I want to find something that he loves. Because, well, I grew up in sport and it's amazing. Like, without obviously the whole what happened. And I want him to experience that as well, like that fun aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it's just finding something he loves, and I can concentrate on that now.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear, mate. I'd love to see him again. I've not seen him for a long time, since he was really little.
Yeah.
I remember your 30th birthday party.
Yeah.
I just met Connie, and I'm going to tell a little story, because I carried around for 8 years with me this feeling of guilt and shame that I had taken your spot in London 2012 and that I didn't deserve it, I hadn't earned it. And that night you said something to me that was massively influential. It just almost gave me just a sense of, it lifted a weight off my shoulders, and you said, look, Sam, like, that spot wasn't mine, so don't feel that way. I never saw it like that. That spot was for you. And it, honestly, mate, that's probably one of the most important things someone's ever said to me. It massively helped with what I was going through at the time, so I will always be grateful for that. And what I would say is, mate, your legacy in gymnastics will always be remembered by the people that are most important to you. Like, I still, like, when I close my eyes, I still remember you when you were a kid, man, like going to Lilleshall for the first time. Yeah. And everyone going, oh, you play this game called Manon. And I'm like, what's Manon? And we're like, well, Dan Keatings is the best at it. And we're like lined up, and there's like 2 team captains, you're one of them, and you're like, we're like picking teams like you pick a football team in the playground. And I'm like newest on the squad, like 8 years old, so I get picked like last. And like, you've got like gloves on and a woolly hat, all black, like ready to play. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, this is really serious. And I can remember Reece Pearson was on your team, and he said to me, I played with Dan, and then all of a sudden he was like, right, put your face in the dirt and hide yourself. He was like, God, he takes it so serious. That's what I remember you like that. You've always been like that. You're so into life, do you know what I mean? And like, I'm glad that, you know, sitting with you today, you seem so excited about life again, because I'm sure at times that was kind of taken away from you a little bit. Yeah. So it's just really cool. I've got so many good memories, mate, of growing up with you. I think you're honestly one of the most honest, humble people that I've ever met in gymnastics.
That, mate, and really
thanks for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure.
No worries. Appreciate that, bro.
Man.